And finally, new rule of all the ways America continues to divide itself. Nowhere is it more pronounced than in gender. And until the Democrats come to grips with that, they won't have much success winning elections. Let's just put it out there. Women are the Democrats' base, and men who get hit in the head for a living are Trump's.
Is not just criticizing Democrats anymore. He's ripping their entire playbook apart in real time. And this time, no cheap shots at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders. He goes straight for the core. The narrative, the strategy, the whole collapsing structure. Buckle up, because this breakdown is about to get very spicy.
And finally, new rule, it's never too early to strategize. Democrats have been having a lot of donor retreats lately where liberal strategists hold ideathons, where they try to figure out why they keep losing elections. You know, apart from using words like ideathon. And now one idea that's getting a lot of attention is the Dems need to find their Joe Rogan, a liberal Joe Rogan, because that's why Kamala lost. Republicans have a podcast. Okay, maybe. Or you could consider this. Instead of conjuring up a new Joe Rogan, ask yourself why you lost the old one. Because
humiliation. He mocks the consultants, the donor retreats, the fake innovation language, the polished nonsense floating around every Democratic meeting like expensive perfume hiding a dead body. The party is bleeding support, and the response is not a fix. It's an ideathon. Read that again. An ideathon. A historic political party now running corporate support groups for people who cannot speak like normal human beings. This is not strategy. This is political anesthesia, and half the party is already on
common sense. The Democratic Party's current approval rating is 21%, which is only slightly more popular than Kanye's swastika shirts. Maybe that's why, according to a new Gallup poll, 45% of Democrats want the party to move to the center, which is up 11 points from 4 years ago.
At 21%. Let that number burn into your screen. And 45% of Democrats, their own voters, are openly begging the party to move to the center. Leaders pretend the formula still works. Their voters are waving a red flag the size of a stadium. The rebellion is not coming from Republicans, it's coming from inside the building. Spare me the numbers go up and down excuse. This is a full credibility collapse with a spreadsheet attack.
This is actually...
I was being fair.
No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing... Let me finish, I give you a chance. Cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at Democratic states, you go look at New York versus Florida, okay? Roughly the same population. The budget of New York State is twice that of Florida. What do they have? Streets paved with gold? I live in New York. I pay the highest taxes in New York. You get nothing for it. And I think that is the image people have of the Democratic Party. Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done.
Hey,
and I think
I live in LA.
Right. And I think, listen, if the Democrats have to own this and realize the answer to everything is not more taxes, more regulation.
People and Rahm Emanuel go for the wound Democrats pray nobody touches. Blue city performance. High taxes, insane housing costs, giant budgets, weak delivery. Democrats sell competence as their premium product, and the cities they run have become billboards for frustration. Voters stopped listening to moral lectures and started counting receipts. New York's budget is roughly double Florida's, and daily life still feels clogged, expensive, and joyless. That is not messaging. That is governing failure walking around and playing.
Moulton said, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. Yes, there's the problem in a nutshell. Because Congressman Moulton sounds reasonable to me, but his campaign manager immediately resigned in protest. Let me make this as plain as I can to the smart people.
One sounds normal, electable, or connected to the real world. The internal punishment ritual begins. A moderate opens their mouth, and the purity machine wakes up like a guard dog. Democrats discipline realism faster than they discipline failure. Failure gets a pass. Realism gets a beating. This is ideological enforcement, and voters can smell that weakness from a mile away.
Conclude by saying the reason I'm so mad at the Democrats is because as a voter, the issues that were important to me were democracy and the environment. And now, there's no one to champion or defend either of them because you, with your aggressively anti-common sense agenda and shitty...
Slides the knife in deeper. A party that brands itself as morally courageous keeps folding to faction pressure and optics panic every single week. They claim principle. They operate on fear. Every controversial moment becomes a test of internal survival instead of public conviction. Courage traded for committee-approved cowardice. When every messy compromise slides towards spinelessness, the pattern is not a coincidence. It's the identity of the...
For months, Democrats have been saying, how is this even close? And they're right, it wasn't. They could not conceive of a second Trump term, but they should have. When does America ever turn down seconds? I mean, come on.
Maher tells Democrats to look in the mirror, and the mirror cracks. Another loss. Another excuse. Media did it. Timing did it. Misinformation did it. Voters did it. Everyone is guilty except the one thing that actually lost, the strategy. Every autopsy turns into a therapy session. The patient stays dead, and the doctors congratulate each other on how sensitive they were during...
Yet when a book questioning the sudden uptick in transitioning children was released, a trans lawyer with the ACLU named Chase Strangio tweeted, "Stopping the circulation of this book and these ideas is 100% a hill I will die on." How very civil liberties of him. Chase, by the way, has just been named one of the grand marshals of this year's New York City Pride March, along with 3 other trans people and a lesbian. Huh, what's missing here? Oh, right, a gay man. That's where we are now. Gay men aren't hip enough for the gay pride parade.
Biden's. It stops being a party problem and becomes a national danger. The activist culture wrapped around Democrats builds a permanent framework of separation. Different language rules, different moral rules, different permission structures for who gets empathy and who gets contempt. They market healing. They manufacture sorting. Every issue becomes a tribal grievance block. That is not a side argument. That is a civilizational warning sign flashing.
And it's okay to ask questions about something that's very new and involves children. The answer can't always be that anyone from a marginalized community is automatically right, trump card, mic drop, end of discussion. Because we're literally experimenting on children. Maybe that's why Sweden and Finland have stopped giving puberty blockers to kids. Because we just don't know much about the long-term effects. Although common sense should tell you that when you reverse the course of raging hormones, there's going to be problems. We do know it hinders the development of bone density, which is kind of important if you like having a skeleton. Fertility and the ability to have an orgasm seem also to be affected. This isn't just a lifestyle decision, it's medical.
Maher walks straight into the puberty blocker and youth culture territory, and the room goes quiet. This is not shock value. This is exposure, activist pressure, media validation, cultural fear, political silence. The chain is complete. Basic questions get treated like moral crimes. Schools, media, and party figures move in the same terrified lockstep. Compassion, they call it. Controlled speech, it looks like. When every institution flinches in the same direction, trust doesn't erode, it shatters.
And this is a phenomenon we need to take into account when we look at this issue. Yes, part of the rise in LGBT numbers is from people feeling free enough to tell it to a pollster, and that's all to the good. But some of it is, it's trendy. Penis equals man? Okay, boomer. Remember, the prime directive of every teen is anything to shock and challenge the squares who brought you up. It's why nobody gets a nose ring at 56. And if you haven't noticed that with kids, doing something for the likes is more important than their own.
Deeper point is even darker. A fringe idea walks into the room and nobody with authority slams the brakes. Leaders refuse to speak plainly. Voters assume the entire party has been captured because silence is surrender. Republicans inflate culture war stories, sure, but inflation only works when the other side leaves the vault wide open, and Democrats keep leaving it wide open, night after.
Finally, new rule, someone must explain to Democrats what binary means. In America, we've got dozens of flavors of pretty much everything. Doritos and Gatorade, Oreos, Pepsi, Triscuits, Pop-Tarts, but we only have two political parties. Most democracies have a parliamentary system with many parties. We don't. We don't. With us, it's always plain or peanut. Cream or suppository. That's that is what binary means. Trump gets it.
If you really like Donald Trump, that's great. But if you don't, you have to vote for me anyway. Whether you love me or hate me, you gotta.
Ruthless math. If your opponent is chaotic, unpopular, scandal-soaked, and publicly exhausting, and you still cannot make yourself the obvious safe choice, your real enemy is not the opposition. It's your own brand. Trump creates openings the size of highways, and Democrats still cannot close the sale. A party that cannot beat disorder with order has a structural disease, not a message.
Bernie Sanders says we should let the Boston Marathon bomber vote. Why? Is there a great clamoring to give deranged serial killers more of a voice in civil society? Is Hannibal Lecter thinking, I love Trump for his narcissistic personality disorder, but Sanders really gets voters like me? Now, I'm sure you can make an argument for this, but we're trying to win an election here, and this just feeds into what Trump is selling.
Democrats are now the party of crazy politicians. Crazy Democrats. They're crazy. They're crazy.
Hey, Democrats, don't make him believable on that, and you win.
Maher goes after the toxic baggage. Positions Democrats cannot explain in normal English without sounding detached, arrogant, or bizarre. The party wants to appear morally advanced. Ordinary voters hear language that feels alien, punishing, and elite. Every campaign turns into self-sabotage dressed up as sophistication. If your own voters cannot repeat your position without tripping over syllables, you do not have a message. You have a liability.
69% of voters say they dislike Trump personally, and there's no sign anything can change their minds. But Democrats' reaction to that is, okay, but let's try. Let me help you. You don't need to be 100% Twitter approved on every issue. Twitter is not America. Most of America, all
Maher closes the trap with brutal math. Voters dislike Trump. 69% sentiment point in the clip. The opening is enormous. The door is wide open. And Democrats still fail to become the obvious home for disgust, fear, and frustration. They lecture instead of listen. They correct instead of connect. When voters reject chaos and still do not trust you, the problem is not the country. The problem is you. This is the whole story. Democrats are not collapsing because the public is too stupid, too mean, or too manipulated. They are collapsing because they built a party that sounds ashamed of normal instincts, addicted to consultant language, scared of its own activist flank, and incapable of drawing a clean line between liberalism and ideological excess. Maher is not simplifying. He is concentrating. He strips the fog away and leaves the damage exposed under hot lights. They sell competence and project confusion. They preach unity and operate a permanent framework of separation. If this breakdown hit you hard, do me one favor. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so the next takedown lands straight in your feed. But before you scroll away, I want your honest answer in the comments. Do you think Bill Maher is actually saving the Democratic Party by exposing its rot? Or is he just burning the house down for ratings? Can Democrats still recover from this collapse before the next election? Or is the damage already permanent? Drop your take below. I'm reading every single